My name's Chris Hampson. I'm 23 years old.
And kind of what are you doing right now to make the world a better place, and what's your story?
Sure. I'm currently serving with the Veritas Forum as the Northeast Regional Director and also doing some work on content development. Veritas is a Christian organization that's pulling together groups of students and faculty at universities all across the country and into Europe to address life's hardest questions and to explore how those questions connect to our life and bring into the picture, in particular, the Christian worldview for those questions. So I've come down to the feeling that the modern university has, in many ways, ceased to be a place where people can reach down and ask the real gut questions of life that perennially come up and help us define who we are. So the initiative, the movement across all these campuses is to create events, sometimes standalone events or dialogue or panel events that engage students, faculty, the whole community in these kinds of questions and help change the culture so that it once again becomes a place where those questions can be explored in a genuine and an open way.
And so how do you do that? I mean, that sounds really, really interesting. How do you help these students kind of with dealing with these questions?
Well, what you see in the academy is that students are there to learn from some of the best minds in the world. So one of the strategies that we have for doing this is to bring together some of the brightest and most genuine minds in the world for conversations about a difficult question. So, for instance, a few years back, we had a conversation at MIT about the foundation for morality between Peter Singer and John Hare, who are both renowned in their fields. John Hare is a professor of philosophical theology at Yale, and Peter Singer is highly regarded as an ethicist and a philosopher. So it's that kind of pulling together of minds in an open forum that I think really helps students see the pith of the issues and grapple with the questions, and also identify with people who are grappling with these questions themselves, and not just intellectually, but also in their personal lives.
Great. And what inspired you to get into this work? Was this something that you dealt with as a student, not so long ago, or was it something you came at from a different angle? And was there maybe a particular event that catalyzed it, or was it just a gradual realization that this was what you wanted to do?
Well, it really was a gradual development. I studied religion at Harvard and had a moment sophomore year where I realized that a lot of the thinking I was doing was profoundly theoretical. And I had convictions as a Christian, had a sense of what I believed reality to be. And then I realized that the question then had to become, how do I live this out? So that was the beginning, an opening of my mind to see that there was a process that I needed to go through that really didn't fit in the university. It was really difficult for me to get a sense of the complete picture. And I think that's true across the board, that universities are not, in many ways, helping students become whole people with convictions and integrity who can go out and address issues. And it developed even further my junior year when I took a course with Steven Pinker, who, of course, is highly renowned for his work in the field of psychology. And, very brilliant thinking, great explanatory power. But I found that the piece that was missing was an element of choice. Who am I going to choose to become? What am I going to choose to do with my life? And so this experience, for me, helped me see some of the limitations of the modern university, and that's really what inspires me to come and work with all these schools in the Northeast, which is really my heartland, to try and help them, again, become places where students can grapple with some of the fundamental questions so that when they're leaving the university, they're in a better place to go out and address the problems of the world.
Great. And how are some of the ways that you work across traditional boundaries to get things done with the Veritas Forum?
Well, there are a lot of boundaries that really need to be crossed, and one of the most fundamental boundaries is the boundaries of worldview. We are a Christian organization, and the things that we're doing come out of those convictions. But one of the things that we're challenging is the idea that open forums can only be produced by a neutral point of view. We very much want to engage in dialogue and conversation with people who disagree, and even disagree very strongly. And we think that some of the best conversations come from places where people who come from different perspectives can engage in dialogue. So we've had a lot of conversations that I'm familiar with in the Northeast, and I know in other regions and other countries, between people who really disagree on very fundamental questions of life. Some of the other traditional boundaries we cross are the disciplines in the university. We've seen increasing specialization in the university between the sciences, the humanities, and the arts. And because of that, it's hard to find figures who can help students see the big picture in between the entire academic endeavor. So that's another thing that we try to do in our forums, is help increase the kind of interdisciplinary conversation that takes place.
Cool. And you're working with young people all the time. What are some of the challenges that you see them facing?
I would say the biggest challenge that I see facing young people today is the challenge of developing integrity. This is something that I've seen in my own life. I've seen it in people I'm very close to, and I continue to see it in the lives of a lot of young people. I think that the modern world pulls us in very different directions, and there's a real deep need for people to feel that they are whole and to seek a kind of whole truth. And this has been one of the messages that the Veritas Forum has been trying to communicate, is that truth, if it exists, is necessarily whole, that there's that quality about it. That when it's not there, when there isn't that sense of integrity, you lose meaning, you lose direction, you lose hope. And ultimately, you lose the ability to affect lasting change. When I scan out and see the people who have really made an impact, they've been people who have been able to commit their lives to a truth that was greater than they were. So I think that this is going to be one of the major challenges of youth today, to seek that integrity and to strive to become people whose hearts and minds are aligned with the truth in their lives.
And, following up on that, what advice do you have for a young person who wants to get more involved in something such as a community or the political process or youth mobilization? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I've had great advice from a friend who told me that you should ask yourself, what do you care about? And ask yourself that question consistently and often, and you start to get a sense of where your passions align. This is something my wife and I are sort of working through together. So the two pieces of advice are first, ask that question, find the issues that you care about, and strive to become a person of integrity. So from integrity comes conviction to act. The second piece of advice is that at some point we need to move from the idealism to the initiative. And I've found that every issue I care about can only be solved by a community of people that are working together and are actively engaged in solving the problem. So I think it's going to be a challenge for our generation to do that team building. But I think the first thing we need to do is decide what our convictions are going to be and move from there into a community of people who can work together to solve those issues. And I think that a staple of that community needs to be both people who are older than we are and people who are younger than we are. I think we should always be consistently learning from those who are more experienced and trying to pass we've learned down to people who are less experienced than we are.